Welcome to VPG's virtual water cooler chat podcast, where we share lessons and stories of women professionals to help empower other women and expand a greater circle of influence. So we walk our journey with those who understand and appreciate us. On today's virtual water cooler chat, Ashley Chung, VPG's principal and founder, had an entertaining and informative chat with Mishele Kieffer. Mishele is IP Counsel at Medtronic, a global leader in medical technology. Mishele specializes in patent conflict resolution, working on projects like freedom to operate analyses, due diligence issues, and patent litigation. Before joining Medtronic, Mishele was in private practice, specializing in patent and general litigation. Mishele also served as law clerk to the Honorable Emmet G. Sullivan on the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia. Prior to law school, Mishele worked as a process engineer for an industrial gas company. She holds a JD from Yale Law School and a BS in chemical engineering and psychology from Washington University in St. Louis. She has 3 children, 2 cats, and 1 spouse, and lives outside of Denver, Colorado.
Hello, Mishele. How are you doing today?
I'm well. How are you?
Well, a little bit of here, a little bit of there, but I'm really, really glad to be able to have a chance to talk to you on this virtual water cooler chat. Tell me a little bit about the background of this wonderful area. It seems really relaxing. Is that where you are right now?
I wish. So I'm on Zoom and with a virtual background, and the background behind me, I'm pretty sure are vineyards. I just got back from a trip to France. My dad lives in France, and so I packed up my whole family and we went over to visit. He lives in this little medieval village, and it's just inexpressibly beautiful everywhere all the time. So we would walk around the village, and there was a fig tree by the car, and we would just pull plums every day from the plum tree lining the street. And so I have this background both because it's pretty and it's just outside the village where we went walking one day, but also to remind me I just went on vacation. And so if I'm starting to feel stressed or overwhelmed, I don't have an excuse. I need to dig back in my very recent memory to just enjoying time in the countryside and with my family.
How long were you there?
2 weeks.
That's awesome. Yeah, my background, I'm at a hotel. I'm in Dallas, Texas. I came over here to see my favorite speaker. He's not even in the legal industry. He's in branding, marketing. Met him 2021 in February, took his class, really was fascinated by the style of his delivery. It's just so entertaining. And he does flash, basically drawings. And then that's how he popped his whole speech. And he does script, but he does not read and anything. Very engaging. So I crashed at a healthcare conference, and I'm in patent litigation. So sometimes, there's biopharm and, that comes close to it. But when I saw that he was going to be speaking, I looked at my calendar. It was I just finished a whole bunch of that. I think I can make this. So I decided to book the ticket and check. Before I did that, I checked with his assistant and say, is he going to be in person or is it virtual? And the assistant was oh, he's going to be in person. I'm great. Looking at the registration, I was I don't think that I really, I negotiated and I talked to the administrators and let them know that I'm not a member and I just want to see if there's anything that they could help me see him in person, and I would be happy to pay. I just need some guidance as to how I'm going to go about it. So before you know it, yesterday was his speech and I'm sitting right up front before he has an 8:30 keynote. So I'm sitting right up front. Amazing. He came down. When he was prepping, he came down and he gave me the biggest hug. He was hey, you want to have a selfie? You got longer arms than I do. Hey, so you're going to take control. He's sure. It was just amazing. That's crazy thing that Ashley Chung does.
Yeah, that's the thing. You just do it. And that's so cool how there's something you want to do. And instead of saying, oh, that's not really my kind of conference, or oh, I have work. You make it happen, and not everyone does that.
Well, the thing is I think that was the outcome. people don't know exactly the process that lead me there. So I just had lunch with an attorney that I worked with 18 years ago. Well, I left half an hour earlier, and I thought it was going to be fine. I was going to be there half an hour early. My Uber had a flat tire on the highway.
So was it like really scary? Like the tire blew and like you lost control of the car? Or was it like a slow stop safely to the side of the road?
Well, I hear like, and then after that, the guy was like, well, I think you need to find another ride. And the guy who drove me is like 70 years old. This is a little bit, I'm trying to figure out my time zone, going to go meet my friend that I haven't seen for 18 years. And we're in the middle of the highway near Irving, Texas. And at this point, I'm more concerned about his safety.
Yeah. Right?
The
situation.
So, yeah, it is quite a situation. And I was like, is there anything that I can help you with? He's like, well, you might need to call another Uber. And I was like, let me call my friend and see whether he can come and pick me up. So he had to drive over, and the Uber driver had to give him directions to come over. And it's like, you have to make a U-turn somewhere and come and get me. And while I was leaving, and I keep asking the guy that, are you going to be okay? And he goes like, yeah, I'll be okay, because like the cars are flying and things like that. So that's my excitement. It feels like I'm living Mission Impossible life. So let's get started. There was a wonderful segue of everything. So Mishele, you and I have never really met each other. I know you're in Colorado. Actually, I think I've known you because you went on a webinar that Jessica Kaiser was on, I believe.
That sounds right. Yes.
And you won a book of mine, and I sent it to you, and I just really like you. And I haven't even met you. So that was really awesome.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a characteristic of yours. You're a delight and you're fun and just down to earth, and just it's really easy to connect with you, I think. So
can you tell us a little bit about you and how you took your journey to be a patent attorney, a woman in STEM?
I guess I can start at the very beginning and say that I went to school to study chemical engineering. And the reason I did that was because it was hard and I was not good at math. I wanted to go to college for something that was going to take some time and some effort. And I felt like everything language or history related, I had nailed, which is just a very 17-year-old's view of the world. I went to college and it was engineering was kind of hard. And so I fulfilled that goal. But one thing that was weird was I finally took enough math that I understood it and it clicked, but it took until differential equations. And so having mastered something that was a real challenge for me, I planned to take that background and go to med school. Like so many patent lawyers, I'm a pre-med dropout. I was in my pre-med classes in college, and I didn't like them. I didn't like the times, and that I had to be somewhere at a certain time, which might have been a harbinger for the future, and me and hourly work. But I really liked the engineers I was around. They seemed a lot more reasonable, and they had fewer pretenses, and they're just less stressful. And I'm of course generalizing. This is not fair, but I had a lot more fun commiserating with my classmates in my chemical engineering classes than I did in my pre-med classes. And so I ended my freshman year, and one of my friends' dads was asking me what I wanted to do with my life. And I said I wanted to be a doctor. And he said, what kind? And it had been so long since I'd actually thought about my dream and my plan that I didn't have an answer. And so I said, podiatrist, because that was the first thing that came to mind. And I'd wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon. I certainly had the temperament for it, but he was like, I don't think you need to go to med school to be a podiatrist. And I'm like, oh, I've whiffed on several levels here, both describing myself and being true to my goals. And so that was kind of a wake up call, maybe engineering is for you. And so I practiced as an engineer for a while. I found it a little constraining. It wasn't as creative as I was hoping. And I had a friend who'd gone to law school right after undergrad, and she really liked it, and I really liked her. So I sat for the LSAT, and I thought that was also really fun. And then before I knew it, like I was off to law school. I'd planned originally to go at night and stay in my engineering job in Houston, but I decided that I wanted to try to do it full time. And it's a real privilege to be able to do that. Not everyone can. And I'd say that the legal industry, they don't have the level of understanding for the different types of backgrounds that require you to go part-time. I think that they should. Like, you lose a lot of good people in like the snobs of the echelons of law, I think, by giving part-time or short shrift. But nevertheless, I was sensitive to that and realized, like, I have a chance, I can do this. And, if it doesn't work out, I can always just come back to my job or another engineering job, but I want to go for it. And so I went to law school. Having a technical background makes it really easy to sort of fall into patent law. And I was warned not to do that. And I definitely don't think you have to. There are really complicated technical and sort of modeling and lots of things you need to understand to be a good lawyer. You don't need to be a patent lawyer, but I like those people too. I like the patent lawyers I worked with early in my career as a summer associate and as a young associate out of law school. And so I think I found my place. I really like doing litigation more than prosecution. And I think that's more just getting sort of caught up in a little bit of TV law, because TV lawyers look a lot more like litigators than patent prosecutors, which is a little, again, unfair to patent prosecutors because I think they live very glamorous lives. And patent litigators don't live the glamorous lives that maybe TV lawyers do. But yeah, I really like the advocacy and the writing and sort of taking the technical and using that as a foundation for the legal arguments versus really getting completely steeped in the technology. I liked sort of mixing those worlds and doing that translation from technical to legal, and then hopefully to normal, ordinary person.
That's great. I wonder if I may offer suggestions on a couple of things that you said. One is when and this is basically because of someone actually did that with me when I spoke. It was, he told me, it's like, I like what you said. This is Sasha Strauss, basically. I like what you said, but I'm going to change your language a little bit. I'm going to tell him to watch this episode later too. So when you said that you were a med school dropout, I think what I like to have you change your narrative a bit is that you redirected your life from med school to law. I think that's just a much more positive framing. The reason why I actually immediately was very sensitive to that was like when I met Sasha before, and the reason why his style is so resonated with me is that if he didn't take that 1 minute to say that to me, someone else might have said something like this, but it didn't deliver it in the way that it did. So when I was talking, I was basically thanking him but it was like, I have this, virtual company. I have a bunch of freelancers. I'm not sure really what I wanted to do. I have no idea where I'm going, this and that. Versus he just pointed it out. I was like, you have this virtual business, you're putting food on people's table, and you're basically flying that Millennium Falcon. Now, I cannot quite come up with something like that to basically change that, but I think the redirection, based on the fact that someone pointed that out to me, that is a possibility, I was like, that's very Star Wars, But it actually was the beginning of helping me to reframe my mindset. And having what he said was, we can't believe in you if we don't see you believe in yourself. And that was something that, on the outside, people might think that I'm super confident. I'm a very nothing venture, nothing gain person. But I think that was one thing that I just wanted to see, because I'm just like, I've actually met a lot of people. I really like you. There's just certain things. I think just like nobody believed that I'm an introvert, but I am. You're like, no, you're not. I'm like, yes, I am. Just watch me when I have basically exerted all my energy. I mean, so I just want to kind of like offer that suggestion so that you know that you're not a dropout. We are really, really happy that you redirected your life from med school to legal. Because otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you.
That's true. And you bring up a really good point about like framing yourself and the way you present. I have always been sort of this like dry-witted, like back of the room commenter. And like there's a lot of good that comes from that. Like I love to complain, but not just to complain, usually to fix things like, oh, this is dumb. Let me tell you how to do it well. But one of the things that you lose the more you get into the world is your audience and your people. You by definition need to go out and meet strangers and be in different environments, and they don't know you. And so I am very self-deprecating. It was a way of connecting when I was younger because like I have a very kind of a humble background, and like I got a lot of attitude whenever I would display any confidence. And I don't think that's entirely like my background. I think that's a little bit of growing up being like an ambitious young woman. Regardless, one of the ways that I could connect with people was being really self-deprecating, like, oh yeah, I like got first in my class, but I'm kind of an idiot. I do that all the time and I still do it. The problem with doing that is one, you're almost always selling yourself short. There are types of people who can do that. And those are people who are already empowered. They can be self-deprecating all they want. But two, you don't have a counteracting force in your audience unless you're like with your friends or with your family to say, she's actually not an idiot. So people start to take you at your word. And so they're like, well, she says she's dumb. I'm sure she's not dumb, but she's probably not going to be my first pick for this really technical case or this really challenging matter that we have. I'm going to like give her something sort of more menial because she said it herself. She's going to dumb. And so it's what do you, and I don't think it's just me, but maybe it is. But so
no, it's not just you.
Yeah, we're making jokes, but like they end up being taken with some degree of truth. And that can really like not be great for you or your career or how people see you. So I'm trying very hard to do that less, but it's so hard. It's like, reflex, and at home with my family, like it's funny. But not in the world. And so that's a useful thing to point out.
Learning is so much easier than unlearning sometimes.
That's a really nice way of putting that. So
sometimes I have my words.
No, I love having like good turns of phrase. I think that's like one of the fun things that I can bring to the world. And you do it like in spades. So I love talking to you because just the way you see the world it's just like the little like gleam that they put on like people's smiley faces, like on like toothpaste ads, like ding. That's
okay.
Kind of like what you bring to conversation. And I like that. And that's what I strive to do as well sometimes, usually. So
that's why we can call each other friends now. So you are an attorney at Medtronic.
Yes.
And can you tell us a little bit about what your typical day is like?
Oh my goodness. So
just any day.
You didn't say, whoa, back up. Every day is different. And that's definitely true. I try to organize my time with like according to my priorities. And so not just to deal with little fires. That's hard to do. Some days I do it, some days I don't. But lately, one of the things that I like to do is have a certain amount of time where I'm interacting with the rest of the IP team at Medtronic to kind of get a feel for what they're working on and how I can support them, because I am in charge of our Freedom to Operate group at Medtronic. And Freedom to Operate is a really important part of most of our IP attorneys, if not all of our IP attorneys' work. We really try hard to make sure that we understand the patent landscape and what our engineers are doing and what other patents are out there. And obviously we don't want to infringe valid patents. And so it's really useful to me to get like the pulse of my customers, which is the rest of the IP team, to see what they're doing and how I can support them. And so I try to spend a chunk of my time regularly, so it's not a big pile up, just sort of having those conversations and keeping those lines of communication open. I'm I'm also, right now I'm hiring. And so I'm spending a fair amount of time reviewing resumes and talking to candidates and trying to do sort of that part of the role, which is a little new to me and it's a little daunting. But it's also really exciting to see that we're investing in something that I think is really important and can really add value to the company. I also spend a little bit of time regularly, if not every day, having a good strategy for the way we approach how we do our work. What I want has some amount of administrative responsibility to it. And I want to make sure that we have a good philosophy about how we're interacting with our outside counsel and how we present and discuss with our business partners so that they understand really where we're coming from when we identify risks or identify things that are not risky. And also, like, how do we make sure that we keep that institutional knowledge? So if someone leaves the company or someone gets promoted, we don't lose everything that they knew when they go. And so those are like my big buckets of priorities.
I have to say that you have a lot of foresight, because a lot of companies, what they think about succession is not something that people generally think about. So they lose so much institutional knowledge as people turn over their attrition rate. And so I really applaud you for, thinking that far in advance. So kudos to you.
It's a real problem. And you wouldn't think that companies haven't figured this out yet.
We all have so much fire to fight. It's just like firefighting is almost like we become firefighters. And then when I used to be in litigation, and I know that you were in, in private law before you started at Medtronic, you were in litigation at a private firm. And so those discovery deadline, when people like sending each other discovery nastygram, how much can you actually get? And let's throw emotion to compel right before January 2nd or something like that. I've experienced all those. So like you, I have not done patent prosecution. I was like strictly a patent litigation, and I actually enjoy that a lot more because I think I like the constant challenges until it got really old.
Yeah.
Like the deadlines, like you're fighting like with the clock all the time. But yeah, I think still to date, just a little bit moderate. Now that I have my own company, I can kind of choose who, like the clients that I can support, and I have some really good clients. So that has been, super accommodating in terms of, to the extent that the deadlines allow us to do that, and of course vice versa. So I just thought that I wanted to kind of comment how much we have similarity because we both have like the litigation background. If you have to use 3 words to describe Mishele, what 3 words would you choose and why?
I think I would first pick pragmatic, which if you'd asked me in law school, I'd be like, no, I love just talking about like the bounds of the law and the implications for it. And I find in practice that I have very little patience for that. I really want to understand like how I can translate what is already somewhat esoteric subject matter into something that is actionable for the people I support and for the businesses that they support. And I just don't ever feel like waxing poetic about the law. It's and I find that at home too. Like I just like, and I feel bad a little bit because I'm like, but what's the point? But I really like having like a use for things. And like, for example, at home, I don't like decorative pillows because why? I don't understand. And my kids have answered that because we like pillows to make forts and stuff. And so now I guess I'm changing my view, but like I like things to have a purpose, and I like me to have a purpose. And so I really like to be able to do that for others, is to, I don't know, turn what I do into something useful instead of just like gobbledygook. I think the second word I would use is helper. And I don't feel particularly helpful most days, but I find like my favorite role my whole life has sort of been like helping other people like reach their potential. When I was very small, my dream job was being a backup singer. And my mom asked me once, like, don't you just want to be a singer? And I'm like, no, I want to sing harmony for someone who's great. And that's really, I find that's what I like to do now. Like, I like to help people get their job done well. I like to help my kids feel empowered to do something that I don't actually have to hold their hand to do. And then my third, I think I've told you this before, but I'm totally going to use it again. And it's a little self-serving, but I like to describe myself as scarred because I've taken a lot in my life personally, and it has wounded me in physical and emotional ways. But I like sort of leaning into some negative emotions and negative experiences because they do a lot to form who we are, especially because we typically heal from them and become different and stronger and more capable people. And so I don't like to, I feel like that's such a part of my being that I couldn't pretend that I don't have it anyway. And so I might as well just like go whole hog with it.
Hey, one thing that I think that I have always been super self-conscious. I didn't come to the state until I'm like 12, and I didn't speak that much English, but I've been in the state for over 30 some years. And I am still very cognizant of my accent. And especially when people ask me to repeat myself, right? And sometimes it's like, are you not hearing me the first time? Is that because of my accent? So I like what you said. I think that narratives are so important, especially in the industry that we are in. And I am making very conscious effort to think twice before I blurted out something. Sometimes I don't succeed. But, it's like you give it a couple try and you kind of like, oh, I should not have said that. It's kind of like lessons learned and you grow from that as long as it's not too traumatic. But I do agree that negative experiences, rejections, I've heard that I'm not particularly religious, but I've heard from someone that is religious is that rejection is God's protection of you. So it's sort of like you're not meant to go that way. That's why certain people are not accepting you, or you are not crossing paths with certain people or experiences. But I think everything in life, it teaches lessons, and it's really on how you sort of frame it. And sometimes something that could be perfectly a fact is the fact. You're a lawyer, you know that. Facts is just right there. You have the fact patterns. It's really how people interpret them and how people put meanings to it. Historically, I have been more leaning toward self-deprecating, or like when people, this is very cultural, even in the Chinese language, it's inherently built in the language when someone say thank you. And there's something called nali nali. It's, oh, you're welcome. It's nothing. It's nothing, actually. It's a small matter. And you've gone through like hell to help someone. And when they said that, thank you. And you go, oh, it's nothing. Meanwhile, you have like basically done everything. So I think that is like the cultural soundtrack that I'm also trying to sort of reframe, especially in the industry, being an entrepreneur, a business owner, you got your clients to basically, I wouldn't want to say please, but at least you need to have customer satisfaction. And as long as I have done my best, then I know I've learned too, because I was such a yes person before. So thank you for being so honest. I think that we all can learn from each other. And I do think that you are very, very honest about some of the stuff. And I only hope that through our chat that we could also help each other like grow, because that's the whole point of women empowerment. Like instead of competing, we can collaborate. I don't necessarily need to like steps on someone to make myself feel better. In competitive industries, I think that happens a lot. I have really been pleased to see how many more like women and the diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility space is like making a good effort to improve that for the people that are, less advantageous. Now, what are some of the lessons learned that you have from being an attorney for women that aspire to be, either going in private law or corporate, or just any lessons that you want to share with our audience?
Well, I think I can tie this in as a lesson, but I want to sort of build on something that you said. And it's really difficult to not just instinctively be competitive or like feel like you have to push someone down in order to climb. Especially as a woman, there's not always a lot of people there to help pull you up. And certainly not people who necessarily look like you. And it just, and I know that there's a very strong counter argument that there is not a lot of room at the top for anyone. And so maybe that there is some truth to that rationale. I don't totally buy that. I think that it's not your success and the way you treat people is entirely independent of other success. Like you can be supportive and collaborative and not just like kick people in the face and still make it. And that person can do that too. Maybe there's not room at a firm. There's a certain number of equity partnerships and there's a certain number of equity partnerships, and you're either going to get one or not. That could be true, but there are other places to go that are needing strong and hardworking attorneys, and other women and traditionally underrepresented groups in the law. It doesn't need to be because you've slain several dozen other women to get to the top that you need to have that sort of mentality. That's like something that has really hit me. Like in my personal life, the way I describe this is the way a tour guide once did to me when I was on vacation. Courtesy is free. That's a little bit softer and wider audience than the women that you work with or the other attorneys that you might be mentoring or working for, depending on where you are in your career. But it really is free, and it doesn't, if anything, it just like takes some of the sting out of the stress that we feel, I think. And so I try to bring that to most things, especially when I'm driving. But and I've been thinking a lot about like, what would I have done differently in my career? Not like choices I would have made, like going to this firm or that company, but like, how would I have changed myself if I could sort of look back? And one of the things that I think is kind of becoming a theme of our call or of our talk today is I would have asked for more. And I think that is a place where young women, especially women, or not young women, young lawyers, but especially women frequently give themselves short shrift, is asking for what you need or what you want. If you feel like you can halfway do it, you can do it. And I think I had to, like, the first time I took a deposition, it had to be like thrown at me. I was like, oh, I'm not ready. And like, you're not gonna like get a golden sunbeam down onto you and like a voice saying, you're ready. You need to do things that are hard and scare you, because then you'll do them right. You'll put in the time and the effort. But you can't do that. And people aren't quite sure if you want to, or you have the inclination unless you ask. And so I think you are like a poster child for really challenging yourself and doing new things and hard things and scary things.
Me?
Yeah. I think I really appreciate how you are in a constant self-improvement cycle. And I cycle through that.
It's called masochism.
But I mean, that's what makes you grow and really understand yourself and what makes you tick and what makes you happy. And most people are not happy just being quiet in the background, like not getting the same or not getting the opportunities they would if they raised their hand. So I feel like if I went back in time, I would have accepted what was thrown at me more enthusiastically, and with less fear, and asked for more. Because I feel like you can't wait for someone. It's just like, if you're self-deprecating, you can't wait for someone to pipe up and say, well, that's not true. You're very funny. Or, whatever.
But it's never too late to change. So
and
that would be our CTA call to action.
Yes, it doesn't go away. It's not like you're going to reach a point in your career where you're like, people are just saying like, oh, you check these boxes, now it's time for your promotion, or like, we've thought about it and we're going to give you this opportunity. You have to really work for what you want and ask for what you need. It's a real challenge to do that, because people say no. And sometimes it's not fair and sometimes it is. And you need to hear that feedback. And if it's not good, if it's feels like an excuse, or you feel like you're getting passed over, it's time to maybe find an environment where you are given the challenges you need to succeed.
Well, Mishele, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate this. And I love looking at the background, especially given the crazy day that I have. I'm very grateful to have gotten to know you. You're in Colorado, so at some point I'll go to Colorado. Hopefully there's no flat tire when I go see you, but I'm sure that you'll come save me.
Yes.